If you were to watch only one Akira Kurosawa film over the weekend, let's consider together which one would be a good choice. Akira Kurosawa directed a total of 30 films in his lifetime, and scaling this massive mountain requires some footholds. What could these footholds be? Two types of Kurosawa films. In the past, there was a director at Shochiku Studios named Yoshitaro Nomura, who released masterpieces such as The Sands of Kurobe, Zero Focus, and Stakeout. In the 1950s, Akira Kurosawa made two films at Shochiku Studios, namely Scandal and The Idiot. Director Nomura served as assistant director for these two films, and was proclaimed by Kurosawa as the best assistant director in Japan. Director Nomura commented as follows about Shinobu Hashimoto, who wrote the screenplays for 5 films directed by Yoshitaro Nomura and 7 films directed by Akira Kurosawa. Shinobu Hashimoto is a man who should not have met Akira Kurosawa. With Hashimoto's script, he made the film Rashomon, which won the first post-war award overseas. This brought in thoughts, philosophies, and social aspects that were unrelated to films. Everything became strangely heavy and burdensome. In a 1974 movie magazine interview, Nomura also mentioned, "When Mr. Kurosawa wants to say something, versus when he wants to show something, the nature of his works changes." Kurosawa's works can be broadly divided into two types, those that aim to say something and those that aim to show something. This is considered a sharp perspective, as there are people who perceive Kurosawa's works as complex and uninteresting, especially among the younger generation. Films like Kagemusha and Iran are often considered challenging. These are the type of films director Nomura referred to as works that aim to say something. On the other hand, films that aim to show something are inherently interesting regardless of logic. The latter type often has elements that even children can understand, providing a strong sense of catharsis. The film we'll introduce is not the type that wants to say something with a message, but rather the entertaining type that wants to show something. Excessive direction. For instance, Kurosawa's debut film in 1943, Sanshiro Sugata, featured a scene where a rival throne by Sugata swims through the air, covering a physically impossible distance. Similarly, in 1948's Drunken Angel, a story set in midsummer, the film was intentionally shot during winter. This decision was made to prevent the actors from neglecting to emphasize the heat during the summer scenes. Conversely, the 1950 film Ikiru tells a story set in winter. However, to avoid actors forgetting to emphasize the cold, it was filmed during the summer. In both Drunken Angel and Ikiru, Kurosawa successfully captures a very clear sense of the seasons. In Ikiru, Takashi Shimura plays a lethargic bureaucrat at the municipal office. To convey the inefficient and mounting amount of work, behind Takashi Shimura's desk is an incredible pile of documents that reaches all the way to the ceiling. High and Low 1963, a black and white film, uses red smoke as a clue to pinpoint the culprit's location, adding red color to the smoke in the film. In Rashomon 1950, to express the intensity of pouring rain, ink was mixed into the water falling as rain, turning it black. In Throne of Blood 1957, Toshiro Mifune was targeted with an unbelievably large number of arrows at once, leading him to furiously protest to Kurosawa, fearing for his life. Akira Kurosawa was known for his excessive direction, surpassing even Alfred Hitchcock. Kurosawa's method of emphasis was not mere bluff but was effective in making the story understandable, influencing directors worldwide and inspiring numerous imitation works. Fortunate to have great mentors. Born in Tokyo in 1910, Kurosawa was the youngest of 8 siblings. After graduating from a middle school, he aimed to attend Tokyo University of the Arts due to his love for painting but failed the entrance exam. Despite this, he continued to pursue painting, hoping to make a living as an artist from the age of 18. His immediate older brother, Time Suda, was a popular bencher, silent film narrator. However, with the transition from silent to talkie films in 1933, Time, caught between the film companies and the bencher union as its chairman, tragically committed suicide. Influenced by his brother, Akira Kurosawa watched numerous films from his teens. At 26, in 1936, realizing he couldn't sustain himself as a painter, Kurosawa took and passed the director's exam at a film company called PCL. It was Kojiro Yamamoto, a renowned director 8 years his senior, who strongly recommended Kurosawa, despite his lack of formal education or background. Kurosawa recounts in his autobiography an incident involving the first script he wrote. It was for a film adaptation of a period novel about a delinquent group in the Edo period called Jurazeman Mizuno. In the script, there was a scene where the main character, Jurazeman Mizuno, reads a public notice placed in front of Edo Castle, memorizes its contents, and passes it on to his fellows. When Kurosawa brought the screenplay, written exactly as in the novel, to Kojiro Yamamoto, Yamamoto said, "This works for the novel, but it won't work as a film." Kurosawa then changed the scene to have Mizuno tear down the notice and bring it back to his fellows, dramatically throwing it before them. This scene required no dialogue. The act of tearing down the notice and throwing it before his fellow was a brilliant cinematic alteration. It conveyed the story visually and instantly to the audience, an excellent alteration. Kurosawa was so impressed by this change that he decided to follow Yamamoto for life, considering him a lifelong mentor. Kurosawa made his directorial debut in 1943 with Sanshiro Sugata during World War II. At the time, the Interior Ministry, along with government officials and existing film directors, conducted exams to review whether new directors were suitable for the role. Officials criticized Sanshiro Sugata for being too influenced by Western culture upon previewing it. Hearing their complaints, Kurosawa was about to angrily respond when one of the examiners, Yasujiro Oz, stood up. "Ozu, 7 years Kurosawa's senior," exclaimed, "Sanshiro Sugata is an excellent film. It passes." Yasujiro Oz was already a great director, so neither the officials nor the other examiners could complain. Thus, Sanshiro Sugata was successfully released. At that time, Kurosawa had truly great seniors, whether it was Yasujiro Oz or the previously mentioned Kojiro Yamamoto. Encounter with Toshiro Mifune. In 1948, shortly after the war, Akira Kurosawa cast Toshiro Mifune as the lead for the first time in Drunken Angel. Mifune's father owned a photography studio in Manchuria, where Mifune learned photographic techniques while helping with the business. During World War II, he joined the Army Air Force's photography unit, where he worked on stitching together photos taken by reconnaissance planes to create maps of enemy territory. After Japan lost the war, Mifune sought a job as a cameraman at Toho, a major film studio, relying on a senior from the Air Forces. At that time, there were no openings for cameramen. However, there happened to be an audition for actors. A senior advised him to get hired as a new actor for the time being, promising to call him when a cameraman position became available. Mifune had no intention of becoming an actor but took the acting audition. Originally, Mifune had no intention of becoming an actor, so even when the examiner told him to smile, he couldn't smile well and was rather blunt. However, his irreverent attitude and bluntness were highly praised by director Kajiro Yamamoto. And so, Kurosawa, a disciple of Yamamoto, cast Mifune in the role of a gangster in Drunken Angel in 1948. Kurosawa said that Mifune's charm lay in the speed of his expression. What other actors conveyed in 10 feet of film, Mifune could accomplish in just 3 feet. He could perform at a third of the speed. Such a sense of speed in his performance was so striking and cool that audiences greatly admired Mifune's gangster role in Drunken Angel. Ironically, a movie that was supposed to condemn Yakuza ended up glorifying them, which Kurosawa later described as a personal failure. In the 3 years following Drunken Angel, Kurosawa directed 6 consecutive films starring Mifune and a total of 15 throughout his career. The partnership between Akira Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune became one of the most iconic director-actor combos in film history, comparable to John Ford and John Wayne, Billy Wilder and Jack Lemmon, and Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. Pioneering the multicam method in Japan. Akira Kurosawa was the first director in Japan to extensively adopt the multicam method, capturing a scene simultaneously with multiple cameras, a common practice in television dramas. Hiromichi Horikawa, who was 6 years younger than Kurosawa and served as an assistant director on Ikiru and Seven Samurai, wrote in his book, a critical biography of Akira Kurosawa. In Seven Samurai, there is a scene where mounted bandits and villagers fight in heavy rain. This scene was also shot using the multicam method with multiple cameras for the first time. The actors, trying not to get kicked by the horses, frantically fleeing in panic, were no longer acting but genuinely trying to escape, and this desperate fleeing was captured on camera. Kurosawa himself was surprised at the unexpectedly great shots captured by the multiple cameras. Contrasting pair, Akira Kurosawa and Mikio Narase. Kurosawa's fondness for the multi-camera approach escalated over time. In 1965, for Red Beard, he employed 5 cameras to shoot an 8-minute-long take. Kurosawa always said, film is like writing paper. Using film like water, especially during a time when film was expensive, was an outrageous concept to film studios. This approach deepened Kurosawa's conflict with Toho. On the other hand, within Toho, there was another famous director, Mikio Narase, who was 5 years older than Kurosawa and highly respected by Kurosawa. Normally, when filming a movie, the cue start is given to begin acting from a point before the necessary scene. Likewise, the cue cut is called after the necessary scene has ended. This means that actors perform not just the required scene, but also include acting before and after it. This is a basic principle of film shooting. However, Mikio Narase did not have actors perform before and after the necessary scenes. By simply omitting the cues start and cut, the scenes could be connected to form a complete movie. Narase was considered very economical by the film studios. In one film, there were only 2 or 3 unused shots in the entire movie. Narase's screen sizes were limited to close-ups, medium shots, and full shots. The first take was usually excellent, so rehearsals were rarely conducted. To save time on lighting, he shot originally discontinuous scenes from the same direction in succession. That's why Naruse's movies had low budgets and short shooting times. As a result, Naruse's films had a unique, smoothly flowing taste. Kurosawa, admiring Naruse's films, marveled at how shortcuts accumulated to create a seamless flow like one continuous shot. At Toho Studios, to rehabilitate assistant directors who had become accustomed to the wasteful use of film under Kurosawa, they were always assigned under Mikio Naruse. After working as Kurosawa's assistant director, Hiromichi Horikawa was assigned as assistant director for 2 films directed by Naruse, Sudden Rain and A Wife's Heart, and was astonished by the vast differences in their shooting styles. Scriptwriting system. A distinctive feature of Akira Kurosawa's films is the scriptwriting system. Out of all 30 works by Kurosawa, 21 were created through collaboration with other screenwriters. Screenwriter Shinobu Hashimoto, in his book The Compound Eye of Cinema, provides a detailed explanation of Kurosawa's co-writing system. According to Hashimoto, in Kurosawa's films, initially, one person would write the first draft of the opening scene. Once completed, multiple screenwriters would gather at an inn to write the same scene simultaneously. This means that instead of dividing scenes among themselves, everyone would write the same scene, and the best version, as judged by the group, would be chosen to be connected into a single film. The role of selecting and connecting these pieces was played by Hideo Oguni, who was said to be the highest-paid screenwriter in Japan at the time. Oguni, when working with the Kurosawa team, would not write anything himself but instead read a completely different book while everyone else struggled with the script. He would then review the scripts once they were submitted. Oguni's talent was remarkable. For example, in the screenplay for Akira, Kurosawa had written the story chronologically, where Takashi Shimura's character comes to a realization about life, creates a park, and then dies. However, Oguni suggested that following the story in chronological order would be boring. It would be better to let the main character die midway and advance the story through the recollections of his fellows at his funeral. This suggestion came from Oguni. Upon hearing this, Kurosawa was furious and tore up about 40 pages of the script he had written. However, he adopted the suggestion of his senior, Hideo Oguni. In Akira, the main character, played by Takashi Shimura, dies midway through the film, and the story unfolds through his colleagues' memories, turning it into a masterpiece. This approach of maintaining objectivity and co-writing the script is thought to be the secret behind the global success of Kurosawa's films. Extremely visual opening scenes. In Akira Kurosawa's films, the beginning of the film, the very visual opening scenes, stands out. In the 1961 film Yojimbo, the opening scene features Toshiro Mifune playing a samurai, walking and throwing a branch at a Y-shaped intersection. The branch indicates the direction he chooses to walk, establishing that the wandering samurai is on a journey with no specific destination. Then, in the village ahead, there is a single shot where a dog walks with a human wrist in its mouth. This one shot reveals that in the village, Yakuza members are already engaged in a bloody conflict. This visual introductory scene is amazing because it instantly lets you know the atmosphere of the movie. In the opening scene of the movie Akira, an X-ray photo of the main character appears. With narration, it explains, this protagonist has cancer here, and his life expectancy is short. Behind him is an unprocessed pile of documents. This alone communicates the situation in which the protagonist finds himself. A prime example of Kurosawa's efficient opening visuals is in the film Sanjuro. It begins with a scene where a young samurai, played by Yuzo Koyama, is having a secret meeting with his fellow samurais at night in the shrine on the edge of the village. Koyama shows a denunciation document accusing the domain of corruption to his uncle, the chief retainer. However, the uncle, upon seeing the document, exclaims, "Dangerous, dangerous," and tears it up in front of him, disposing of it. The young samurai, believing that relying on his uncle would not resolve the domain's corruption, showed his accusation letter to the chief inspector. The chief inspector says, "Understood. I will stand with you. Gather everyone and let them hear the story." The samurai who heard the story concluded that the chief retainer was no good, but the chief inspector understood. At this moment, Toshiro Mifune, who was using the shrine as a lodging due to a lack of money, wakes up and says, "Eavesdropping is a good thing. I can understand the main point of the story. In my opinion, the chief retainer is genuine and the chief inspector is a fake." The young samurai were surprised, and as they were about to grab Mifune, they realized that the shrine was surrounded by the henchmen of the villainous chief inspector, and a brawl suddenly broke out. This opening scene masterfully explains the plot of the story in just the first 5 minutes. Dialogue is hard to understand. In Kurosawa films available on DVDs or streaming services, the visuals are often beautifully restored with digital enhancements, but many of them have audio that is challenging to understand. For instance, Ikiru remains a magnificent masterpiece even when watched today, but without Japanese subtitles, even Japanese people can hardly discern the dialogue. While it's true that the recording equipment of the past was of low quality, according to Hiromichi Horikawa, assistant director at the time when the actors' performances reached their peak during rehearsals, Kurosawa would start shooting before the recording department's microphone was ready. The recording department started recording in a hurry, but since shooting suddenly started, the sound quality was apparently not good in the early days. Therefore, some speculate that Rashomon, which received little recognition in Japan, could win the Grand Prix at the Venice Film Festival because, when shown abroad, subtitles were used, allowing international audiences to understand the plot. Significant improvement in recording quality occurred with the 1958 film, The Hidden Fortress. From this point onwards, the aspect ratio also shifted to CinemaScope. Therefore, the movies I would like to recommend are those works created after 1958. Of course, there are numerous masterpieces before 1958, but the challenge lies in understanding the dialogue. Recommended film. Therefore, I recommend the film Sanjuro, 1962. The 3 films made in the early 1960s, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, and High and Low, are all highly entertaining and easy to watch. Among them, especially for those new to Akira Kurosawa, Sanjuro is recommended. This is because the film is almost a comedy. Furthermore, with a runtime of 1 hour and 36 minutes, it's short and easy to enjoy. The original work is a short novel by Shigeru Yamamoto. When compared to the original, this film has many scenes identical to the source novel, but significant changes have been made in its composition. This restructuring is precisely the adaptation that Kurosawa received directly from his mentor, Kojiro Yamamoto, that is, a visually understandable adaptation. Please enjoy Toshiro Mifune's performance as Sanjuro in this film. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe.